cannot believe this is the last of the 24 hours.
I really can't.
Here we are still celebrating, we're still taking action. I can't wait to announce this next session. It is our last, so definitely if you have any questions or anything that's on your mind, still put those in the chat. We'll be sure to answer those as soon as we start. So let's get it going. I see him coming. See some faces. Yay! Oh my gosh. Okay, we see some faces, we see some names. This is so exciting. I will introduce you guys before you start, but thank you all for being here. Thanks for closing us out. I can't believe it's been 24 hours, and you guys are gonna take us home with this really awesome session. All right, let's get it going. So we've come to the last session of the day. I couldn't be more thankful to those who have stuck with us. There are a couple names in there that have been with us all 24 hours. Kudos to you. I'm sending you love, coffee, tea, all the vibes. I'm sending you all the vibes. But this next session is especially special. Madison Di Bari, who, if you see her name, basically she applied to actually host a Youth-A-Thon session. And she won because this session is just, you guys are gonna be blown away by the conversation that is about to happen. So a little bit about the session. This group of professional animal caretakers will discuss all the different aspects of nurturing animals under human care, featuring topics ranging from conservation, rehabilitation to education. Their goal is to leave viewers with more knowledge and confidence when deciding which types of programs to support. I couldn't be more excited to see so many familiar faces. Give them some love, follow them. I'll put all of their Instagram tags in the chat, but without further ado, take it away.
All right, thank you, Bailey, for that lovely introduction. So yes, I am very excited for this panel. I've got some amazing women here with me to discuss the different aspects of keeping animals in human care. Each of us has dedicated our lives to working with wildlife and spreading the message of conservation. So like Bailey said, our goal is to leave you all well equipped with the tools and the knowledge to make more responsible when it comes to supporting zoological institutions. So I hope this conversation is to bring up different perspectives and, more importantly, to encourage critical thinking, because there can be so much misinformation passed around regarding animal care, but we are here to kind of clear up those gray areas for you guys. So before we get started, I would like to introduce myself and my fellow panelists. I am Madison De Barry. I am an activist and ocean lover. I have upwards of 10 years of experience working with animals ranging from domestics all the way up to apex predators, both in and out of the water. I am currently a keeper at a wildlife sanctuary where I spend my days caring for our animals as well as giving tours to the public. The ocean has always held a special place in my heart. As I got older, I began to learn about all the challenges that our ecosystems face due to human activities. So it was clear to me that something was wrong. And I decided that I was going to do something about it. At 16, I became an intern with the Big Blue and You, which is one of the lovely organizations that is supporting this event. And it was my first real involvement with conservation. With the Big Blue and You, I had the opportunity to attend and even speak at my first Youth Ocean Conservation Summit. Since then, I've had such amazing experiences attending summits and events relating to ocean conservation, including the Blue Vision Summit in Washington, D.C., where we were able to meet with representatives and push for ocean-friendly legislation. Let's see, this past October, I was actually invited to the United Nations by an ambassador to attend the United Nations General Assembly, which also happened to be during Climate Week, which was very fitting. I was able to sit in on meetings with government officials from all over the world and learn about their own country's struggles with native wildlife and with climate change. So each and every one of my experiences over the years has only fed my desire to educate others and continue to fight for what I love, which is the ocean. Let's see, I still continue to use my voice through my work and social media to bring awareness to those who may not have conservation at the forefront of their minds. Activism, education, and a deep love for our natural world is at the very basis of who I am, and I am very excited to have this opportunity to share my passions with all of you. So if one of my other panelists would like to tell them a little bit about themselves, you can go ahead now. All right, who wants to start us off? I see Megan right here, if you would like to.
How do I get big? Do you do it or do I do it?
You are big right now. I think it's when you speak.
Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. So my name's Megan. I am a medical keeper at a small sanctuary in Eastern Canada. So I have been working with exotic animals since before I knew I was working with exotic animals, like ever since I was a kid. I've always loved let's just say I had 2 different times I had to get rabies vaccinations before I turned 10. So I have always had a little bit too much passion for like native wildlife, and that has really extended into preserving wildlife all over the world and shaped my idea of conservation and what it means. So instead of just, you know, project animals and everybody's favorite animals, realizing just how integral every single part of an ecosystem is was completely shaped by my experience versus my education. And so I feel like I have a different outlook on a lot of different things that make people uncomfortable about conservation, and my passion is to teach people that it's okay to have those uncomfortable conversations, to talk about conservation in not so many words, like, you know, not to dance around the subject of the fact that we're killing our planet and we need to be responsible for that, and for these species, and just to teach people that it makes you feel bad, but that means you should do something about it. So I've been zookeeping for 2 years. I have done animal rehab for 5, and I've been working, like I said, with wildlife since before I can even remember. So I am a veterinary nurse, and I am a big cat enthusiast. I absolutely love big cats, but all aspects of conservation are my favorite parts.
Oh, great. Thank you for that. I think what you mentioned, you know, the uncomfortable conversation, it makes you feel a little guilty. I think that's what we're all here to talk about because, like you said, it's a really important conversation. So thank you.
Yeah.
Madison, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Wait, is it getting bigger?
Yeah, I can see you.
Oh, okay. I was like, I'm looking at you. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Madison as well. I have been working with animals pretty much my entire life, starting with domestics and kind of focusing on horses. I'm like your casual crazy horse girl. And I studied agriculture all through college. And then when I graduated and I turned 21, I was like, what am I doing with my life? I want to save the world, as all of us 21-year-olds do, right? So I turned down a job in Texas working with horses, and I turned around and flew to Africa and volunteered at a rhino orphanage, where I was like, this is my passion. Like, it really kind of threw me right into conservation, and I was able to be like, wow, this is an actual problem that here in the States we don't really get the opportunity to see firsthand. And obviously I was like, all right, I'm in Africa, I could stay here forever. But that didn't happen. I had to come back, unfortunately. So I was like, how am I going to work in conservation here in the States? And I found my local zoo and I started volunteering, and I showed up every single day until they were like, okay, she's never leaving, and they hired me. So now I'm working at an AZA accredited institution, and I work with several different species that are ambassadors for their species, for wildlife conservation, and really allowing me to play a huge part in bridging that connection between people in cities and suburbs here in the States and wildlife out in the world. And it's really, really important to me. I love talking to people and I love answering those questions because it's really kind of magical to see the connection that people can build, or like the compassion that people can build and the empathy that they can grow through animal interactions, through being at a zoo and seeing these things firsthand and talking to keepers, talking to any staff member really, and having those questions answered right then and there when they're thinking of them. So then hopefully, you know, we can inspire people to care about the world that we care so much about. So that's kind of a little bit about me.
I could not agree more. I think the reward of seeing people become inspired right before your eyes when looking and interacting with these animals is something that, you know, makes it worth it, to me at least. So
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And then Rachel, last but not least.
Hello. Am I coming through?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. It's weird, everyone who's big and whatnot. So my name's Rachel. Much like everyone has previously talked about, I was the little girl that at 2-3 years old, I went to zoos and I saw the connection that people were able to build with animals. I was able to ask those questions about them. And so from the time before I started even forming memories, I wanted to work with animals. I started working with domestic animals when I was 9-10 years old. I begged my mom to take me everywhere and work with them and volunteer. And so here I am. I've been professionally working in the zoological industry for 7-8 years now, bouncing around between a few facilities. I started actually in strandings, which the marine rescue rehabilitation field, and went into animal training and care and bopped around between the two of those. And you know, I completely agree with everything everyone has said so far about inspiring people to understand how amazing animals are, connect with them, answer those questions that we all talked about. And I'll never forget the first time I saw these animals that I've spent my whole life loving and appreciating end up deceased on a table in front of me because of something a human had done. And so that's what really sparked me to get onto the conservation side of things. And so working in stranding, building a couple things up with that, traveling to Africa, kind of like Madison had talked about, seeing what's going on over there, traveling to a couple other places in the world and seeing how conservation can be a big part of a bigger community as well. And so how do we translate these zoological experiences into something more meaningful that we can all connect and work together on? And having conversations like this is where we start. It's one of the most important things, right? So we all need to, or thank you guys for having us on here and being able to talk about these things. So I guess that's a little intro about me. So right now I work with great apes. I've worked with marine mammals before and training stranding, I guess, zoological. I've worked with, I think, over 30, I stopped counting at 30 species, so I'm not really sure what we're at now, but something over that.
Great, thank you so much. And that is kind of the beauty of this panel right here, because I myself, I don't know for any of you, but having gone to a lot of these types of events, it's kind of the same narrative over and over again. And we don't really talk about animals in human care and how that can also aid in conservation, how it can help inspire others. So that is why I'm super excited for this panel so much. So to get us started, I do have a pretty broad question that I think we all kind of touched upon in our introductions. But in your opinion, why are animal care facilities so important when talking about conservation and education? So I think we all mentioned, you know, the inspiring. I think it's really important for people to see these animals. As one of my favorite people, scientist, Dr. Sylvia Earle, said, you can't care if you don't know. And I know for myself personally, the first real memory that I had of being like, this is what I want to do, was I had to be only a few years old. And it was actually at SeaWorld during one of their orca shows. And I just remember watching and feeling this, you know, fire that I can still remember to this day and being like, this is what I want to do. So if anyone has anything to add to that, feel free to go ahead.
I can chime in. I'm right there with you, Madison. It was, I had the similar moment at the SeaWorld Orca show. And I think some people, orcas are a very controversial thing right now. But it's really inspiring those people to have those moments of, oh my gosh, the same water that touched the tail of an orca just fell on me. And how cool is that? And where in the world do you get to see that? And it's really unique to be able to not only have that experience, but because of, think of orcas in nature before they were taken on by facilities that kept them in zoological care. They were feared. No one understood what they were. No one knew. They said, hey, these big things are taking our fish. They're causing us a lot of problems, and they were hunted. And so now, because we're able to see that connection that they're able to build, not only with us as humans, but with other social conspecifics in their pod, we're able to see that even though they don't look like us or talk like us, they're still cognizant animals that deserve a place on our planet. And so without those interactions that people have at SeaWorld and other facilities, how do you build that, right? How do you build that by seeing a dorsal fin out of the water? It's incredible. I've been 6 feet from a 12-foot dorsal fin that broke the seas up in Vancouver, and I was paralyzed. It was so cool, but that's not, it's important, but it's a different type of important than what you build in a zoo.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else wanted to jump in just now, but I kind of feel the same way. Like, I also traveled to Africa, so it seems like we're all on that same train. So I have always been very interested in animals, like I said, and I knew I wanted to do something working with them, and vet nursing seemed right. And then something outside of animals altogether led me to Africa, and I ended up at a rehab center, and I touched a cheetah, and I never turned back. Like, it was like, I knew I loved animals. I knew they were amazing. I knew I was going to have a career doing something with animals. And like, if I had never done that, I wouldn't be where I am today. Like, it changed everything for me. And like, specifically with zoos and endangered species, and like, just like the connection that they can allow you to have with animals that literally don't exist in the wild anymore is so important, I think. Like, we've had several, like, we work with underprivileged kids at our zoo, and just to see the connection that like children have with animals that they can't form with people. So for example, one specific case, non-verbal autistic boy, wheelchair bound, hadn't spoken in years and years and years, spends time and time again at the zoo. So the first word he says in years is snake, because he wants to handle the snakes, and we've been always letting him touch the snakes and stuff like that. So like, that connection, like, it didn't just help him, right? His parents are then like, wow, like, this is a base instinct to interact with something that is so important. And like, all these, it was just crazy to see that world crumble around them. So to like say, zoos are just to look at animals completely negates the connection it causes for people. Like, you do care if you know. That's the truth. Like, if you don't know, you can't care. That's right. But like, if you can touch a snake and all of a sudden that fear you had for 40 something years is just gone, and you're like, wow, these are incredible, intelligent animals that I can help. Like, it just changes people's perspective. And that's, the goal of conservation. Like, yeah, you can be like, hey, those tigers across the world need help, and people are like, oh yeah, but like, the tiger's 5 feet from you. How do you feel now? Like,
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I have to add on with both or all three of you. Like, I feel exactly the same way. I too have stories where I've seen kids just totally, their lives change because they have the opportunity to spend the time with these animals, to see, to learn about, to ask questions, and to basically make connections between the animal that's in front of them and like things that they already understand, right? Because as I'm sure we can all agree, we all have an idea of what an animal is, right? You can read about animals in the book, or you can like talk about whatever with your family or whatever. But what's so special is that when you see that animal up close, and if you even see it or can like talk to somebody about it, or even like actually make a connection with that individual, like you guys have said, that that is the most magical thing, because like all of you, I've had those interactions as well, and that's kind of what made me decide to work in conservation, to use my voice to help these animals, to help wildlife, and all that we're doing and sharing these animals in zoological facilities with the public is hopefully inspiring more of that, right? Like that's the whole point of the Youth-A-Thon and talking to kids and talking to each other and even talking to adults, is hoping to kind of instill some of that passion that we have and in the rest of the world, and little kids that maybe would have never even thought like, hey, I want to touch a cheetah, you know, like that's freaking cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you can continue.
I wanted to add one other thing too, is I think it's so important to have these connections that inspire. And what I think a lot of people don't realize, the importance that zoos play in conservation too, kind of touching on some other things we've said, is that you have this inspiration, and that inspiration is drawing viewers to come learn about these animals. But the thing too that, you know, getting up close with an animal is something that's it's unreal. It's magical. Someone used the word magical, and I know it sounds so cliche, but it is magical. But you know, we are able to do so much research and base hand knowledge, data gathering in zoos, that it's so hard to get in nature from time to time. So I remember my mom a couple years ago, she sent me something. I don't remember if it was from the BBC or who it was. Oh, NPR maybe. It was this big research that they did that said that gorillas have a specific happy grumble when they eat food they like. So it's kind of like if a pizza were in front of me, I'd probably be, oh, you know, all excited right now. But they did this big like 10-year study or something, and I don't remember because it was a couple years ago, so don't quote me. They did this big gigantic study to confirm that yes, in fact, gorillas happy grumble when they eat food that they like. You could have asked me a week into working with gorillas if that happens, and I would have said, yes, absolutely. They have a happy grumble for food they like. They have a happy grumble for people that they like. They have all of these things that, you know, sometimes when you're not up close and personal with that every day, we take for granted, but other people aren't able to know that. And so the research and whatnot that we're able to get in zoological institutions to help animals in the wild, help us understand them better, not only their social constructs, but how to take care of them. I had worked at a rehab facility for a while when I was in Strandings, and we had a juvenile spotted dolphin come in, which was so amazing. And to be able to be a part of that raising process was unreal. But we actually went to some big names like SeaWorld, and there was a lot of aquariums involved, and said, hey, what are their blood values supposed to look like? What type of formula do we need to be feeding this animal? And because they had had these animals for so long, we were able to take this baby dolphin that literally could not swim on her own, and she's full grown, she's getting spots now, she's in amazing care. And you know, that story is replicated time and time and time again, because when we do work with these animals, we can figure out what they need. And so, you know, and then we can actually take that out into nature and help them. So it's a big cyclical event where we're inspiring people, and they're coming and they're helping generate funding for this research. That's really, it's helping animals across the world, whether people realize their admission ticket is doing it or not. So I think that's another important aspect to add.
Yeah, no, that definitely is. And I do see a question from one of our viewers. I will get to that in a second, but to touch upon what you just said, I think a lot of people, when they think of zoological institutions, sometimes have an older view or mindset of them and what they used to be. And I think it's really important to highlight that a lot of institutions now have transitioned more to conservation, more to education, more to research. And it's really important because there are so many animals like that juvenile dolphin, or like the animals that I work with at the wildlife sanctuary, that this is kind of their last place. There would be nowhere else for them to go. They would either have to be euthanized or they would not survive. So I think that's a really important thing to make sure we think about as well, is that these places are critical in caring for certain, especially endangered species, and animals that, you know, unfortunately have come into contact with human activities or human products, whatever it may be. So I think that's very important. I will ask this question, I think we all kind of touched upon this as well, is what are some of your first memories falling in love with nature, animals, or our planet? So for myself, I think we all kind of, since a young age, I remember instead of, I don't know, watching Lizzie McGuire, I was watching, you know, the Planet Earth series back to back, you know? But I think one of the most amazing moments for me, I have always been a shark girl, I've watched Shark Week and Shark Fest and all these things for so long, but once I was actually in the water with a shark for the first time, I cannot explain the feeling that gave me, that this was like, okay, yes, I chose the right path. Like, this is exactly where I need to be, what I need to do. Like, these animals are my passion. So if anyone else has a cool story about what first sparked that, that realization that, okay, this is yes. And I think someone mentioned, you know, petting the cheetah, that was one of them, if someone wants to add.
Yeah, so I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I'm a horse girl through and through. Like, I was like, I'm going to either be a vet or breed horses. That's all I want to do, right? And then, like I said, I was like, wait a second, there's other things that I could be doing with my time. And I'm really passionate about animals and how can I better help animals? How can I do better by the world for animals, basically?
All right.
That was fun.
Thank you. Okay.
Let me get the rest of them. Love that. Zoom was like, just kidding.
Nope.
We'll be right back after these messages.
I feel like we were put on commercial.
Yes. All right. I think, Madison, you were in the middle of saying something before.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome back. But yeah, so like I said, I went to Africa. It's like, it seems like a lot of us do or have. And I felt like the warm breath and the velvet nose of like a little orphaned rhino, and really just had that moment to like sit back and not only be like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe I'm experiencing this right now, but also be like, why is this animal here? Like, why is this animal at this orphanage? Because, you know, its horn is so valuable, or its mother's horn was so valuable that it was left orphaned, and now needed people to intervene and take care of it. And, you know, that also kind of doubles back on like why animal care facilities are so important, why rehab is so important, and not even like right there smack dab in the middle of, you know, South Africa. But here in the States as well, we have a lot of animals that go through the illegal pet trade, or, you know, end up with some experience that then lands them in a zoological facility where we can help them, or we can allow them to live an enriching and like positive life. And, you know, it was just that moment where I'm like, wow, this living creature that shares the same planet that we share and is not out to harm anything. And here it is. Like, thankfully, it was at an orphanage, and it could be taken care of and all that good stuff. But it also, it's very motivating to feel that experience and be like, wow, like, what if this wasn't the situation? What would the future look like for this animal? And how can I make sure that never happens? You know?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry if I was cutting someone off. I totally agree. And I think it's important that we realize, you know, why we have these rehab facilities in the first place is because of human activities. Like, we wouldn't have as many endangered species if we were taking better care of our environment. So it definitely goes hand in hand. I think someone was about to add on to that. I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah, I'm always talking, so it's really easy to cut me off. I was just gonna say, like, my background is like, you know, that's the big pinnacle moment that changed like the course of my life was the cheetah, but the rehab idea, like, that is like most of where my childhood was, is I grew up in a very rural community, and the realization of what you do to animals, there's a disconnect there. Animals become an object. They're just something for us to obtain, something that belongs to us. And a lot of rural communities, that's kind of the logic surrounding them, especially I know I live in like northeastern Canada, like northern Canada, sort of. East coast is like, it's confusing, but pretty much everywhere is rural. Like, we have 2 zoos in my province, and one is mine, and it's actually a sanctuary, and then we have one big zoo. But to bring it all back, like the disconnect that's there for people, that's like, well, cows are meat, and these animals need to be protected, like elephants, right? They're talking like elephants. I'm like, yeah, but what about the several species of birds and fish and this and that are here that need to be protected, because we're poisoning our waterways and blah blah blah. Yes, obviously we should be conserving everywhere, but why are you choosing a token animal over like your own backyard, where you can make sure that people are implementing proper hunting and fishing and stuff like that guidelines? You can make sure that people aren't polluting. You can make sure that companies pay out the butt for the toxins that they put into the waters, that they are forced to fix these things that they have caused. And they're like, oh no, like that's not an issue here, like endangered animals are elsewhere. And it's like that disconnect, like it never sat well with me even as a kid. So I'm playing with these animals, and my mom's solution or my dad's solution, not at their fault at all, but because of the way they were raised, is like it's sort of almost disposable. Like raccoons and porcupines and all kinds of different animals that are considered pests in rural areas have a function in an ecosystem, and trying to explain that to people is really, really hard. But having people come to a zoo or a rehab facility, for instance, and seeing, porcupines do behaviors and like see that there is something in there, and they're like, wow, that's like a functioning creature and not just this like token, like this thing. It's not a thing, like it's a being. And trying to break that disconnect is something that's so hard in a small area like this. And I don't know if you guys face that same kind of thing like where you are.
Yeah, I think that's another, really important aspect of, keeping animals, rehabilitation, allowing the public to see them for something other than a pest, something other than an object. Once again, quoting my favorite Dr. Sylvia Earle, when she got in the water, she said, I learned to see fish for something other than lemon slices and butter. Mm-hmm. I got to see them for what they are. They are important. They are crucial to our ecosystem, something as small as, plankton to something as large as, a tiger or a gator, apex keystone species. So I think, that is another aspect of human animal interactions that is easily overlooked, is getting people to see past the face of the animal and realizing that this is also a living being, creature that is just as important to our ecosystems as anything else that, is fun to care about, like panda bears or something, that's cute and fluffy.
Can I build one thing off that too? Kind of going off of, we're looking at every animal has a place in their ecosystem, and everything that we do, I live by the water, so fishing is a big thing with us. And so one day we had gotten called out to respond to a deceased turtle. And so turtles, when they pass, they float on top of the water sometimes. And so me and my crew had went out, or my crew and the people I was working with, and we went to go retrieve a loggerhead. And so you're looking at a loggerhead sea turtle that is practically a dinosaur. I mean, these animals have existed for so long and gone through so many changes on our planet that they have been able to overcome and adapt and overcome and adapt. And then humans and our revolutions have taken place, and now they're critically endangered. And so we drive up on our boat and we're going to get this turtle, and we consider ourselves pretty strong. We're used to lifting several 100-pound turtles out of the water, and we can't get this one out of the water. And we had gotten the majority of this turtle out of the water, and I'm trying not to be gruesome here, but we got the majority of it out, and there was one flipper that we couldn't get out. And so several of us get in and we're trying to figure out what is going on. Long story short, one rope had caught on. So this turtle was swimming and one rope had caught on to one of its front flippers. And so again, that's one fisherman, one accidental rope release. And that rope had over 75 pounds of gear on it. So that rope got entrapped in a different fishing net that picked up a crab pot that, again, you're looking at those fish that are dying along with this too. And when we necropsied this turtle, its stomach was empty and it had passed from asphyxiation. So imagine walking through the forest and you're continually picking up more weight and more weight and more weight to the part where you can't walk anymore. And so you've already starved because you can't hunt. You are now to the point where you can't breathe because turtles surface for air. And so again, it's a very sad situation, but it goes to show one fishing line can be the death of an animal that survived for it's a dinosaur, right? And so you're looking at these animals that are struggling to survive, that are such an important part of our ecosystem, that how do we do better by that? Because that didn't have to happen. And this was a 200-pound turtle. He'd been around for a really long time, and we did that to him. So it's important to know.
Yeah. Again, touching upon, at least where I work, we call them, our educational ambassadors, animals that we've rehabbed that we can't release, that we can then use to teach the public about. I think, sea turtles, you mentioned, are kind of like dinosaurs. And a lot of animals that people fear, like I said, I'm a shark girl. So a lot of people are scared of sharks. They are essentially dinosaurs, and within, human activities within the past several decades, 90% of them have gone. I think 31% of sharks and rays are facing extinction. And people don't realize this, and people don't, it's scary. It's not something you want to care about. So I think that is where we all come in, and we show these animals in a different light, like, hey, you don't have to be scared of them. They are really important. You may not, you don't have to go swim with it, but this is something you should care about. And my thing is, like, I'm not going to let you forget, I'm going to use my social media to talk about this every day, because it's very much an out of sight, out of mind type of thing, which is, again, why these facilities can be so important, because, no one's out looking at these animals every day. No one's out in the ocean looking at these animals every day. So it's a really, I can't express enough, like how much these facilities really do to inspire and to educate and to help with conservation. We are kind of coming to the end of the time. So there's one question that I want to leave our viewers with, more of a call to action. So I'll get to the question in a second, but I think it's important for everyone to use those critical thinking skills to make sure, your dollar holds a lot of weight, where you put that dollar, who you support. So it's important, and we'll touch upon, how to tell if a facility is, worth supporting or not, how to tell the good and the bad, but your money, and where you, spend your time, who you advocate for is really important. So with that being said, in your opinions, what can the average person look out for to make sure that, a facility is a credible one, is doing the work that, we want done, whether it's AZA accredited or something else? So is there anything that you can tell our viewers to kind of keep in the back of their mind and use those critical thinking skills when choosing where to put their dollar?
I can start. Sorry, I'm trying to look at everyone's little picture and make sure. My biggest thing is whether you're looking at a zoological facility, a sanctuary facility, or even the products that you buy in the store. I think the first step is realizing that you need to take that first step. Because AZA is a great organization that, there's a lot of rules that regulate everything that all of the organizations under it do. I've been through lots of AZA inspections, and we're white gloving everything, and it's how we do it a daily thing, right? So we know that our animal care is up there. But there's, a lot of other governing organizations as well that make sure that animals are in top-notch care. So it's doing that research. It's doing that research before you visit the facility. Where do the animals come from, et cetera, et cetera? Are they working in rehabilitation and rescue, that's definitely something. But even when you're buying your products at the store, that's something too that I don't want to derail the conversation too much, but there's a lot of like sustainable palm oil apps, even for shark industries and things like that. There's a lot of apps that will help you make sure that you're making daily decisions that are helping the environment. And that's, I think if we all work together to do a lot of little imperfect things, it really does make such a big difference, because we can't all be perfect. And it's just taking those small steps and realizing that we should be taking those small steps together and posting on social media, like you was one thing you talked about, to make sure these things don't stay out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. No, that was great. Thank you. Did either of you want to touch upon that?
I can jump in for a second. I guess in terms of like choosing where you put your money, like you said, it is research. Everything is looking into it and doing the research. It is very easy to ask for recommendations and stuff like that. And I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm happy to give people recommendations. But the best way to find things out is to do them for yourself. Like it is to take that first step. It is to start actually being an active participant in what you support. So, you know, there's a lot, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement that is happening right now, that they're calling for you to not be complacent. And so to not be putting a foot forward, to not be putting that effort in, you're being complacent, and silence is harmful, not just obviously for the Black Lives Matter movement, we're all speaking out about that, but in everything you do. So if you are doing things half-hearted because it feels like something that you're supposed to do and you're not engaging yourself in everything that you're taking on, what's the value of that to you? Like if you don't find that what you are claiming to be passionate about, if you don't find value enough in it to, I don't know, throw it into a Google search bar and read an article on Google Scholar, then you're kind of asking for failure. So, you know, to make sure that you are stepping out and being like, hey, I really want to find a good place that I can support, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, you can check with one of us, or you can be like, what are the best places and what are the reasons why? What makes a good zoo? There are 100 articles on the internet, on Google Scholar about that, about what outlines a good animal facility, and stuff like that. And, you know, taking that first step, like Rachel said, it's the key. Just do that. Get out of your comfort zone. Learn something.
And one quick thing I wanted to add too, because I want to put myself on the spotlight. When I first got in this field, I thought I was great. I recycled some things. And I was like, I know conservation. And this was 10 years ago. And it took me a long time to set my ego aside and realize that I'm still doing a lot of harm, because I'm doing one thing right doesn't mean that I'm still not doing 10 things wrong. And that's okay. And the more that people do their research and find out these things, I mean, I went to Africa a year ago, and there was one day that I was just sitting there crying because people were telling me that the Worcestershire sauce that I was eating with my wings was taking away from fish from penguins, and it was eye-opening. But it's one of those things that today, 10 years into this, I'm still learning, and it's okay. And people are going to still learn, and it's going to be a continual learning process. And it's okay to not be perfect, but as long as you're trying, none of us are perfect. I don't want to put anyone else on the spot, but we're all human, right? And so it's realizing that we have to set our egos aside and be willing to do better. So together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to add to that too. I think you kind of touched upon it, but seriously, like, it's not about going out there and changing your entire life and doing everything and making yourself that perfect human being, right? The first step, like we've said, is just being like, hey, maybe I should think twice before I purchase this. Maybe I should go to this zoological website and say, hey, what's your mission? Like, is this facility supporting conservation? You know, where does the money go back into the animals? Are we rescuing, rehabilitating? Do they spend time educating the community? You know, all of these things, and those aren't necessarily all of the things, but just taking that first step to ask the question, right? And make one change and go for that for a while, and then add something else and continuing to educate yourself as you go along and creating your lifestyle that's hopefully less harmful than some other lifestyle that you were living, right? It's not, like you said, it's not about being perfect, and it's not about all of a sudden changing everything to become perfect. It's definitely just about showing up for the cause, I think.
Yeah, and we just got another question I'll touch upon quickly before we run out of time, but that kind of ties into everything we just said. It's for those who love animals but don't necessarily want to pursue working with animals as a career, what are ways to get involved? And everything that we just said, you know, where you put your dollar, the lifestyle choices that you make, accountability, you know, educating yourself, those are all the most important things I think I could, you know, stress about. You know, you don't have to be us. We were just talking about this before, getting, you know, no sleep and working long hours. You know, that doesn't have to be you to care about animals. Education is so important, and, you know, where you put your dollar, whether it's supporting a facility or the products you buy, or the food you eat, you know, things like that. So 100%. Oh, I just got
Oh, sorry. Can I add something on that?
Yeah.
I had actually a conversation with Bailey several months ago about this exact topic. And the thing is to be a conservationist, you don't have to work with animals, right? To help wildlife, you don't have to work with animals. You don't even have to work at a zoo. You don't have to work, you know, in the field. You can be an artist, you can be a musician, you can write books, you can do something that you're passionate about. You can take your talents and you can turn that around to also help conservation, right? So I know several artists in my life that love art. That's what they do. They do paintings, drawings, you know, movies, whatever. And they'll donate their art to a conservation fundraiser, or they'll paint something that they're hoping to inspire people to care about wildlife or whatnot, you know. And you can do that as an artist, you can do that as a musician, you can contribute to the cause, contribute to conservation, contribute to educating and connecting people with wildlife with whatever talent you have, whatever that is. You just kind of, the whole thing is being creative, right? So if you're passionate and we care about animals and we love them, find your niche to like fit in there and connect people with them, right?
Yeah, that's one of the big things, just because you kept saying where you can put your contributions and how you can contribute and stuff like that, is like, make sure you're not getting, like, people should make sure they're not getting caught up in saviorism. Like, at first I was like, I want to go and do this and start my own rehab and blah, blah, blah. And like, the reverse of that is like, there are tons of rehabs and they're all underfunded. Like, support the ones that already exist, and, you know, helping them build on theirs so that they get to a point where we've either done such a good job we don't need rehabs anymore, or there's enough money funding these different places that we can open more or have more staff. Like Madison mentioned, we were all talking about how tired we are earlier, because working with animals doesn't have a schedule. Like, you're always there. So like, making sure that, you know, it's not about you and how you feel about helping, it's about actually helping. And so not making it about yourself, but making it about like, hey, here's like 5 different places that you can donate in your own like county or something that already exist, are already established, and are already helping animals but need your help now. So, you know, steps like that.
Yeah, and there is one thing that I would like to mention is so again, you know, speaking out, supporting these facilities, but also I find, and I'm sure all of you can attest to this, is that as keepers, you know, we are the front line. We are the ones kind of the middle between people interacting with these animals. And that means we also feel the brunt of, you know, the negative connotation, like, you know, I know you can all agree with this. So I want to, you know, explain to our viewers really quick is speaking out against things that are, you know, problematic. Again, using those critical thinking skills before you do that, because there are a lot of practices that are actually completely normal, totally safe for the animal. That is, you know, the standard way of doing things that people who are not in the field, who don't work with animals every day, see and think, that's bad, that's abuse, and then therefore, you know, go after them. So that's something that I would just like to mention, because, you know, us as keepers, like you said, we're the ones getting no sleep. We're the ones, you know, waking up before the sun rises to do all the dirty work that, you know, no one else wants to do. And then we unfortunately, you know, feel the brunt of the public's, you know, opinions. So that is just something I always like to mention. I would like to say a huge thank you to Bailey, Laura, and Andrew. Thank you guys so much for putting on this incredible event. I cannot express my love for you people. Thank you for selecting us to be able to host this session and, you know, speak out about these things that, you know, aren't normally talked about. I hope we helped clear up some gray areas, left the viewers with a little more confidence, knowing, you know, how they can get involved and what facilities to support and things like that. So thank you so much.
Welcome. Before we go, I actually had one question. This is just like, I was thinking, and then I was going to put it in the chat, and then I was like, no, I'll just ask it. So my question for each of you is, what is one thing all of the viewers right now, maybe not right now, but tomorrow, this week, this month, what is something that they can do to help protect animals in the wild? You know, be that coming to a facility, you know, when they reopen, donating to different organizations. What's one thing that people can get involved? Because I know that's the one thing, you know, I've always loved about going to various rehab centers, zoos and aquariums, is that, you know, they always do a really good job talking about what they're doing for the animals, their counterparts in the wild, you know, and how they're protecting and conserving those species. So what is something that you all would recommend that viewers can do to kind of help give back, and if this session really resonated with them?
Yeah, so obviously we talked about, you know, where you put your dollar and the lifestyle changes, but one thing we didn't talk about, which is incredibly important, that a lot of people don't realize, is using your voice and pushing for, you know, the protection of wild places. You know, if you love tigers or you love leopards, you know, the biggest threat to them, one of the biggest threats, is habitat loss. So you make sure that this is not swept under the rug. Make sure that your representatives know that people care about this, because it does make a difference. Like they know and they remember when people care enough to reach out, to write, to call. It does really make a difference. So using your voice, if you know, don't have money to donate, you don't want to go somewhere, that is one thing that, you know, anyone can do anywhere, is definitely push for the protection of these animals. Make sure that we are not, you know, having environmental rollbacks, which we've been seeing, which I'm not happy about. So that, you know, definitely push for environmentally friendly legislation and hold these people and these companies accountable. I don't know
Absolutely.
if anyone has something
to add. I just wanted to support what you said, because I think, you know, a lot of us, or all of us, know we've all been seeing kind of the strength of social media right now, right? So it's kind of like, we can tell you to donate money all day. We can say like, oh, blah, 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 go to your local zoo. Like, yes, do those things if you can, if you're able to. But social media and conversations, difficult conversations, those are just as powerful, right? The more people that feel compassionate about this, the more people that understand, or are starting to want to understand, or even thinking about it, that helps animals and wild places and wild things, right? Just having those conversations with people, asking the questions, like talk to a zookeeper, you know, whatever you have, like you're thinking, any questions that you have, like voice them, and then share your knowledge, because getting people passionate about animals is what's going to protect them.
I could not agree more. Did anyone else want to add to that at all?
I'll add a little bit, something a little bit different than people are probably not going to be expecting. So due to COVID-19, the sanctuary that I work at is actually being closed down. So we've started to send out most of our animals. And we're dealing right now with, essentially a couple years ago, the city completely cut our funding. So we've been working, pretty intently to keep all of the animals that we have are rescues or donations, so home surrenders, that kind of thing. And we have 2 lions and 2 tigers right now that we can't place. So we've been really struggling with that. So donations are always welcome. We were a completely donation functioning not-for-profit. So we're a zoo for zoning permits only, and zoos aren't bad, but it was just like, it's so heartbreaking for them to be like, no, let's just bulldoze it. And we're literally still there with animals. So if you want to send me a message or something on Instagram, we're accepting any and all donations at this point, and also any ideas for places in Canada where our tigers can go, because as they are sanctuary animals, there are some stipulations that come with them, and one of them is that we cannot have them cross the borders. So we're in a really tight spot, but I still wanted to get out here and be positive and talk to everyone. So thank you for having me. But yeah, just, reach out to your local not-for-profits, because we're struggling right now. Like, COVID is killing not-for-profits right now.
Yeah, my facility that I work at, we were taking hard hit because, again, non-for-profit, all of our funding came from the tours we were doing.
Yeah.
Shut down. So those, even just the smallest donation made such a huge difference. Like, people donating a gallon of bleach actually really helped.
Yes.
So donations for sure, yeah. Rachel, did you want to add something before
I do, but I'm so heartbroken about this.
I know.
I feel like I shouldn't say what I'm going to say. So definitely, if you have money, donations do go such a far way. I mean, I've been there working for small nonprofits before, where a gallon of bleach or a bag of paper towels literally makes everyone's day. So going off of that, I can't stress that enough. One thing, a shameless plug, me and one of my coworkers who used to work in zoological care recently started a podcast. You can find it on my social media if you're interested. But going back to what you can do to help animals in nature, it's those small everyday actions. So every podcast episode will feature small actions that people can do. So the one that we just released, one about penguins, for example, I was kind of talking about, I didn't realize this was the African penguin, specifically a situation that until we went over to Africa, I said, hey, these populations have been decimated over 99% within the past 2 centuries. How can we help them? And they said, stop eating unnecessary sardines and anchovies. And so it was, what products do we have, like Worcestershire sauce, cat food, things like that have sardines and anchovies in them. So one thing that our podcast is featuring, because I'm not trying to do a shameless plug, but also how do you say this all in one minute? Every episode will have a daily task that people can do. And it's continually combining those daily tasks, because again, we're not perfect. I'm continually learning, and I want to be continually learning for the rest of my life. So continually learning together, using that social media to promote, and when and if possible, if you have any donation possibilities, to reach out and find a local facility that you can help stay afloat, because that's so important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think just to highlight really quick, to give viewers a kind of bullet list, or so of course, donations, education, and using your voice, I would say, are the biggest 3 things that you could do if you want to get involved and you don't want to be sleep deprived like us.
No, thank you so much for answering that. Thank you, Megan, for sharing that with us all. Thank each of you. I know what you do. I've been fortunate enough to know some of you personally, but get to know some of you now, and I know the incredible amount of work that you put into taking care of these species. It's unreal, but I know you have such love for it, and we have such love for you. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thanks for closing us out. Thanks for ending Youth-A-Thon.